So what do we do and who we are? So we are expert in designing S&OP. And basically our approach is based on 4 different components. The first 2 are people and process, because indeed if you want to implement an S&OP process, what is required, of course, is to have the people and to know the process. So here at Solventure, we have that sales and operation planning knowledge. And what we also believe is that supply chain is so complex, or it involves so many different actors, that it's very difficult for to model everything in like an Excel base. So that's also why at Solventure we don't just give advice to company about their sales and operation planning process, but we also support the implementation via a tool. And the tool we are implementing is called Archiva. So you can see Archiva on the top right. So Archiva is a software we implement in company to support their S&OP process. It's a tool which has been created in '93, and it's basically a US. The tool is developed in the United States, and as you can see here in the PowerPoint, Archiva is also based in the US, in Belgium, and in India. So they have offices all around the world. And also something important to mention here is that Archiva is listed in the Magic Quadrant of Gartner. So for the one who don't know what Gartner is, so Gartner is an external party which references all the IT actors on the market, for instance, for sales and operation planning. So if you want to implement a sales and operation planning tool in your company, typically what you will do is you will look in the Gartner Magic Quadrant which are the best actors. What do we do at Solventure? So we split basically what we do in what we call a building block. So here in the screen you see 6 building blocks. So from segmentation, product management, demand planning, inventory, supply planning, and exec S&OP. Today the webinar will be about one of the building block, and you see that each of the building block we can also break it down into multiple element or multiple submodules. So today it will be only on focus will be on segmentation, even if at the end of the presentation I will also make links between segmentation and, for instance, demand planning. So how do we typically use segmentation within a demand planning process/project, and also I will make some links between segmentation and supply planning. Okay, some of our customers, so as you can see here, we are present in different, industry. So it goes from chemical to FMCG, going through as well discrete manufacturing. So you can see here all those are customer where we implemented the Archiva solution. And about Solventure, the last thing I will say is also that we have 2 other business units. So the business unit I will present today is a Solventure S&OP, but we also have 2 other business units, one being Solventure Academy. So Solventure Academy offers, it's a training institute, and it offers training in companies. So it can be, for instance, tailor-made training. And Solventure Life, what it does is, well, where most of the software look at the past data to extrapolate the past data in the future, well, Life, so leading indicator forecasting, will try to find some external indicator to extrapolate your or to make a forecast in the future. So Life is really advanced forecasting techniques and forecasting models. So if you will be interested in one of those 2 business units, please feel free to visit the website. All right, so let's start now with segmentation. So first question, you remember we said that we are going to have 2 questions, and the first one is, okay, in the end, what's the driver for segmentation. What would be the benefit of a company in doing a segmentation project? What we still see is that in a lot of companies, they say that they don't have segmentation. So most of the company don't have segmentation. So it means that basically they will offer the same service level for all their customers and for all their products. But in essence, that cannot be true. It cannot be true because you won't treat customers and product the same way, because a customer can have two customers, they can have different sizes, they can have different profitability. So even a customer and a product, they can have different profitability. A customer can also have like different willingness to innovate with you. What we also see for the customer which implemented the segmentation, they typically do it in only one dimension. And the two examples I put here on the slide is one dimension being customer only. So that's typically sales driven. So sales team, the sales department, they will make their own segmentation on customer, for instance. And the other way around, it can be a product segmentation where it's more supply chain driven and operational cost driven. So here you see that they don't communicate between each other. Also, something that we saw at customer is that they have sometimes too many parameters. We saw, for instance, one customer where they had more than 10 parameters to make or to come up to a segmentation, and then it becomes really, really difficult and impossible to understand for people why a product or a customer or a product customer ends up in a specific box. And the last thing I want to say here is, well, sometimes there is just a lack of differentiation, meaning that also at some customer we see that they did a segmentation exercise, but 90% of their customer are, for instance, considered as a customer. And in most of the conferences that we attended, we understood from the discussion we had that segmentation is really a hot topic, and companies struggle with it. But then the question is, how comes that we end up with an issue in segmentation? So do you recognize those elements? Well, my company is really customer first, or is customer centric. We put the customer at the heart of everything we do. We are customer driven. We love our customer. Well, we don't have anything against it. But what does it mean if we look at the supply chain triangle? I will explain you step by step the supply chain triangle. If you are a customer driven company, like who gets the best service, is it the most profitable customer, or is it the one that shows the loudest? If you're a customer driven company, it means that we do everything for every customer at any cost. But this one can't be true. This is not always good to do that. If we offer a service, we have to wonder two questions. First, at which cost? And at which inventory? So it's not only about services. So that's what we have to understand here. It's not only about services. Services might be indeed supporting the revenue, but the investor, they don't really care about the revenue. They care about the revenue, but they care more about the profitability. And the link here, let me take the red laser. And so the link between the service and the cost is what is going to give you the EBIT or the profitability. So as an investor, I'm not only interested in the revenue, I'm also interested in the EBIT, and not even only the EBIT. I'm also interested in the cash, because you can have, for instance, for two companies might have the same EBIT, but if one company requires, for instance, 100,000 euro and the other one requires 1 million euro, then I will probably go for the first investment. So the key question here is, what's the EBIT we generate over the cash we invested? So it's all about the bang for the buck. If we are customer driven, driven company, we still need to make trade-off. If we deliver a service, fine. But the question is, at which cost? That will give you your profitability, and at which investment. So that's the entire concept, or the entire idea or vision that we have at Solventure around segmentation. So here, at which cost and with which inventory. Another question is a salesperson defending? So his customer? So is he defending more his bonus, or is he defending the best interest for the company? And there again, the same question than before is, fine, at which cost and at which inventory? If we are a company which is sales driven, there is something we call the complexity creep. The complexity creep means, well, each year we will add more SKU because we want to offer a good service to the customers. So we will add more SKU without removing old one or other product. We will promise also shorter lead time. So basically the customer can order in a shorter period, and it will be delivered in a shorter lead time. We will give them more flexibility in ordering. So basically the customer can order whatever he wants, whenever he wants, and even in whatever quantity he wants. We will get more strict requirements on quality and delivery. So for instance, the customer will say, yeah, you can deliver me, but you can deliver me only Monday and Tuesday between 3 and 5 p.m. Okay, so we call it creep here. So we call it complexity creep. Why? Because we add those services. So those services are the services that your company is offering, but they never got noticed. So it's almost unnoticed, and worse, they are never questioned. So they remained unquestioned. No one asked, was the cost involved and what's the impact on the inventory? So here you see those tornado. Basically it shows, okay, if you have a discrepancy, or if you increase the service, then you have to make sure that your triangle remains at the equilibrium. I will give you an example. If your market is under pressure and you're fighting for market share at any price, maybe you will sustain the top line, so the revenue, but we will see a big drop in the profitability, and inventory will go out. So what's the reason why we need segmentation? Well, the first reason is what I showed the slide before. So it's really to rationalize the service and the product portfolio to improve EBIT. So EBIT and working capital, so the cash and the cost. So in the end, it's all about good complexity versus bad complexity. And sometimes you will need to take some products out or some customer out. Yes, it can have an impact because your revenue might decrease if you decide to not serve that customer anymore. Indeed, your turnover might be reduced, but in the end, it's all about the bang for the buck. Okay, so what will be the impact on my profitability, and what will be the impact on my working capital? So that will be that's the first reason why we need segmentation. And the other reason why we need segmentation is, of course, to create a focus, because we want to implement a strategy. So which are the customer of the future? So on which customer do we really want to focus? On which product do we really want to focus? We want to stop to say yes to everyone. So stop being everything for everyone. And basically the goal of segmentation is really to create a strategic compass. If we invest money, it's better to keep inventory for A product rather than C product, or it's even better to do it for A customer rather than C customer. Who is the sponsor of that segmentation exercise? Well, the segmentation exercise in nature is a strategic exercise, and it goes cross-functional. So all divisions should be involved. sales, finance, marketing, supply chain. So sometimes you will have to find or to define a certain trade-off. And in the project that we have done so far, the CEO has always been part of the discussion of the steering committee and also of the workshop. So with the sponsor of such a project, well, the answer is the CEO. Okay. So for us, the CEO should always be involved in that segmentation exercise, because again, it will give you the vision. It will give you what we call before the North Star. So it will give you your compass. So the CEO is really important to be able to make, trade-off. So first question. The second question is, how do we approach segmentation at Solventure? So how do we what are the steps that we follow at Solventure to approach segmentation, or to challenge company in their segmentation, or to help company to define a good segmentation? Well, we identified basically 6 steps. So 6 steps. The first 2 are, I will need to segment my customer, and you will need to segment your product. Yeah? And once the segmentation of customer and product is done, you can start to differentiate service across the segment. So services we will see later on, but do I want to offer the same service to all my customer or to all my products? So that will be step 3. Step 4 is, okay, I will make some choices. In step 3, I will make some choices, but then how can I simulate the impact of my choice on my volume, on my revenue, and also on my margin? Step 5 is implement. Yeah, okay. If your segmentation is finished, then you have to make sure that you implement it, and we'll see where do we have to implement it. And the step 6 is adapt as you go, meaning that segmentation is not a one go project. Let's say it's a project that needs to be refined over time, and that you will have to redo the exercise from time to time. So let's start with the first step. First step is about customer segmentation. So the first thing that we do in company, typically we brainstorm on possible segmentation criteria. So segmentation criteria can be qualitative or quantitative. Quantitative is, for example, what's the margin, what's the volume, while qualitative will be something like, what's the willingness of the customer to innovate with me? Is a customer leader in his market or not? So those are more, let's say, qualitative criteria. We have to involve, as we mentioned before, and that's also the reason why we said, well, CEO should be involved. We should involve sales, product management, marketing, supply chain, and finance. I will give you an example of that's what we did at one customer. So one customer, we grouped all those divisions, and we asked them, okay, what are, according to you, the criteria that we could potentially identify for a segmentation exercise? So you will be amazed by the number of criteria. So here in that specific example, for that specific customer, we got between 100 and 200 criteria. So of course, this is a bit too much, or even way too much. Then the first exercise will be to cluster them. So you will group basically all the post-it that you will get. You will group them into several clusters and rank them by priority. So here on that pie chart, you can see here, so the size represents the number of post-it that we had for that specific cluster. So I will just quickly go through it. Reference customer means, is that customer a good reference for me? Does it add value to my image? Solvability, is the customer paying, or is it always late in paying? Cost of service. So here it's really interesting, because normally the cost of service is something you define after the segmentation. So first you do the segmentation, and after you say, okay, I will offer that type of service to that type of segment. The margin, the volume, the potential. So potential is, okay, maybe that customer only buys 10 units, but he has a very huge potential. So potential can also be considered in the segmentation. We have others, innovation. So does the customer innovate and the type of client is. So in the end, what we want to do, we want to build a calculation model. And the calculation model, what we want to do is that the model represents or is at least right for 90% of the customer with 20 or even better with 10% of the parameters. So we will try to make sure that each customer goes in the right cell with only 10% of the criteria. And after we will give also sales the opportunity to upgrade or to downgrade a certain customer based on the remaining parameters. And I think that one will also give buy-in from the salespeople, because salespeople will feel that you involve them, and in the end, salespeople will have the ability to promote, let's say, a certain customer. So segmentation really allows the salespeople to challenge their own customer. It will allow them to review the target. A bit like statistical forecast is a good tool to challenge the salespeople. Well, here that one will give you a good tool to challenge your customers. So segmentation, we see it as a tool to manage your customers or to improve your customer profitability. And customer segmentation, so how do we segment it? Basically, we do it on two different axes. So here you have one axis being the volume and the other axis being the margin. The volume, you rank it per level. So here, high volume, medium volume, low volume, and the same for margin. And there we say, okay, well, if a certain customer has a high volume and a high margin, then it will be in the cell, in the A cell. So that's something you will have to define, but afterwards I will show you in Archiva how it looks like, and that one, so you will see exactly the same type of graph in Archiva. So that will give you the first result, and after, as we explained before, we will allow salespeople to make overrides. So for instance, it can be a certain customer can fall or can end up in a cell, but he's a bad payer, so we will give him a penalty and we will move it from cell A to a C. So the salespeople will make an override based on, as we discussed before, based on another criteria. One golden tip: don't think it's easy. Segmentation might look easy, but it's not easy, and some tough provokers. So we'll give you just some example why it's not easy. So you remember before we talked about volume and margin, but first question is, okay, what does volume mean? Is it historical volume, so historical shipments, for instance? Is it the orders? Is it the forecast? Is it the budget? Is it the real volume, or is it the potential volume, or is it a combination of everything? So you see that one will already be a first discussion that you will have. Okay, you have your access, but what does it mean exactly, and how do we define it? And the second one, also margin. We see in companies, from companies to companies, the definition of margin might change. I think we have seen already 4 or 5 types of margin calculation. And for the margin, do we calculate it at the variable cost, at the full cost? So you see, it looks easy, but in the end, it's not that easy. So be very careful. Hard work is required. So that's the first step, customer segmentation. The second step is product segmentation. So first I focus on customer. Now I will focus on product. And for product, we don't typically use value or margin. The reason why is because we want to avoid the risk of correlation. Because if you have a customer, that a customer will probably be linked to a item. So a product is very aligned with a customer, and for product segmentation is not something we want to have. What we want aim or what we want to achieve is we want to have a good spread over or across the 9 cells. So that will be the goal of the product segmentation, and that's the reason typically why our approach on customer is more quantitative, but on the product segmentation we use more qualitative criteria. And typically at Solventure, what our approach is, or what we recommend to do, is to take, indeed, as I mentioned, a qualitative approach. So here you see that as we had for the customer, we had 2 different axes, volume and margin. Here we have what we call operational fit and strategic fit. So strategic fit, it can be high or low. Operational fit, it can be high or low. Strategic fit is an input from marketing. Strategic fit is it a product of the past or a product of the future? Is it a product we want to be known in the market, or is there a high competition for that specific product? So does it make sense strategically? Yes or no? Or is my strategic fit high or low? For operational fit, there the input comes from production. The question is, okay, is it an easy product to produce? Does it require a lot of change over time? Does it generate a lot of upgrade? So typically, if you are in that kind of product here, in a strategic, in an operational fit low, if you want to score service for this product, it will probably come with a high cost. Okay, and then so we have a first dimension, we have a second dimension. In this way, we can come to a customer product segmentation. So first step was to, okay, I define my customer. Second step is I define my product. And here I will merge the two. I will merge the two. And what's very interesting here is that you see that you involve not only salespeople, not only operation, not only marketing, but you come up with a segmentation which represents actually all your organization. And that will give you the compass for your strategy. And that's also, that links again back to what we mentioned previously with the CEO. So CEO should be the sponsor of that specific project. The third step is about differentiating services. So once we have defined the segmentation, so that's what we just did before, we need to differentiate services. So which type of services do we want as a company to offer to our customer? And here it's also a brainstorm. So we'll brainstorm again with that group of people, and you will just list all the services that you offer to the customer. And it will be very interesting in your company. You can start to do that. List all the services that you offer to the customer, and you will be very amazed by the number of services you deliver or you offer to customers. So here, for that specific exercise, we had 46 different parameters that the company was offering to the customer. So here I will just highlight the biggest two, or the highest two here, is ordering and logistics. So as a service, do we offer like less than a pallet, so the customer can order less than a pallet? Do we offer specific delivery window? Do we offer multi-drops? And for technical support, do we provide sample analysis, on-site support, or even free samples? But before we answer, how do we differentiate the services? And before we answer that question, we have to go one step in between, and we have to classify those parameters. And to classify those parameters, we use a very interesting model, which is called the Keno model. And what the Keno model says is, it says, well, I can basically create, or I can differentiate all your services among 3 parameters, or among 3, let's say 3 clusters. One being the qualifier, the other one, so it's the red area, the red arrow. The yellow one, performance, and the third one, excitement. So that one is very interesting. Qualifier means, well, you see, if I perform below the competition, so if I offer that type of service below the competition, it will negatively impact my profit. So, and what you see also is that the other way around. So here you see it negatively impact if you are below the competition, but the other way around. So if you are above the competition, you are not, basically your performance is not way higher. And that's an example is quality or shelf life. So basically it means, well, if you do a poor quality, you won't have any market. But if you just have an average quality, it will be fine. And if you have very good or very high quality, the performance won't be bigger. So the other one is a performance feature. So if we perform less than the competition, it will negatively impact the profit. And the other way around. So here, if you perform well, it will positively impact the profit. And so that's probably where you want to steer your company. And if you decide to offer that kind of service, so for instance, the lead time, if the lead time is in that specific category, well, what you can say is, I want to offer a lead time I want to offer a good lead time for my A customer. But if you do that for your A customer, probably you won't be able to do it for your C customer. And the last one is the excitement. The excitement means, well, if you go below the competition, it doesn't have a big impact on your profit. But if you go beyond, then it will excite the customer. And that one is typically a customer specific packaging. So here the question is, do I want to offer a customer specific packaging for my C customer? Probably not. Okay. So that's what the Keno model says. So the Keno model will just say, okay, that specific criteria here, I would classify between qualifier, performance feature, and excitement. And that's typically an exercise that you have to do at your company, because maybe the lead time here in my example is performance feature, yeah. But it depends on the company. For other company, it can maybe be a qualifier. So what we did so far, step one, we listed all the service parameters. Step two, we differentiate between, is it qualifier, is it performance feature, or is it excitement? And now what we have to do, we have to differentiate the services per segment. So here you see, for instance, for the qualifier, for the performance and for the excitement, well, for the qualifier, we have our segmentation here, product and customer. Well, I know that if I go above the market, it won't have such an impact. So my decision or my strategic decision will be, well, I will offer a basic quality for all my customer product. But for performance, what we saw before here is, for instance, for the lead time, there it has a big impact. So for instance, for the AA customer, I want to offer them a very short lead time. I want them to be happy. I want to beat the market, but I won't do the same for the C customer. For the C customer, I might have more an opportunistic approach. So I would say, well, I can deliver you the good, but you will have to wait 8 weeks, while a customer will probably wait 1 or 2 weeks. And the last one is here, the excitement. So what we mentioned before, okay, a packaging which is customer specific. That's something that we will only offer for that part of product customer, and not for the C. Or at least we can say, okay, for the C we can also offer it, but it won't be included in their service. So basically they will have to pay for it. So that's an example that we did for a steel company. For a steel company, you can see the yellow means here that we want to keep stock because we want to boost our lead time. Here for that specific classification, so for those product, those customer, there we wanted to beat the market on the lead time. And the average lead time in the market was 8 weeks, and we wanted to go for 4 weeks. So this is where we want to do better than the rest of the market. Another example, which is a bit more detailed. So here it shows, I won't go too much into details. We will send you the slides, or you can ask for more information. So here what you see is, okay, which type of services do we offer to A customer, to B customer, and to C customers. Step 4 is simulate the impact. Okay, but then if you decide to remove or to add services to a certain group of customer, well, you have to measure and simulate the impact of that service. Yes, of course, you will need to be prepared to lose some of C customers, but then you will need to be able to run scenarios and to run simulation. So typically what we do is we take an opportunistic and a pessimistic scenario. So in the first scenario, I say, well, because I increase my service for A customer, so here for AA customer, I'm expecting that group to buy 10% more product. And because they buy 10% more product, because I offer them more services, so it adds more value, I can also expect a bigger impact on the margin. And the pessimistic scenario is, well, even if for the A items and A customer, even for that block, even if I give extra services, well, I won't add any volume, but it might be the case, and the margin won't be impacted neither. So those scenarios are typically scenarios. You will create scenario, optimistic, pessimistic scenario, to measure the impact. And then, for instance, for that specific example, what we saw, so here is the current situation. So in the optimistic scenario, what you see here is that, well, based on that matrix here, the volume will increase, okay, but the volume won't increase that much, but the total margin will be much or way higher. And the same for the conservative. So for the conservative, we know that we are going to lose some volume. So you see that those -10 and -50. But well, it's fine. It's fine because even if you have less volume, your margin will still be higher than the current situation. When are we finished? So that's the question. So when do we finish that exercise? Well, the answer is until you feel that it's right. Okay. So potentially you will need to do some iterations. So, and remember that it's very important, because remember that the segmentation will reflect your business. And also what we did for a specific company, well, they had really different thresholds to do the segmentation. So you may need a separate segmentation for a separate business unit. And the example I will show you in Archiva is also looking at 2 different business units. And how do we get the sales on board? Well, if you are an account manager and you see that all your customers are C customer, well, probably you won't like that exercise. You won't like that exercise. On the other hand, it can also give you, as we mentioned before, it can give you a nice tool to challenge your customer as well. If the customer asks you for a price decrease, you will tell him, look, if you ask me for a price decrease, I won't be able to offer you that service anymore. So you have to see it, and how do we sell it to the salespeople? Basically, is that it's a tool which will help them to develop their customers. Where do we implement it? So once it's implemented, where should that segmentation go? Well, the answer is that it should go in your ERP system. That's of course, but not only. because you have to make sure that you use your segmentation everywhere in your processes. And here I will give you two examples. The first one being for demand review. So if you want, or if you ask your salespeople to review the demand, probably you will ask them if they want to focus on one specific group. Well, probably you will use the result of that segmentation in the collaborative demand review, because those are the customers which are very important and for which we need an accurate forecast. So we will ask them to spend more time for those kind of customers. So the segmentation is applied to the demand planning. And the same for supply planning. When you will finish your demand planning and when you will plan your machine or your capacity, what you will typically do is you will allocate machine capacity or machine availability first to your A product or A customer. So those are two examples where you can reuse your segmentation. And the last step, so step 6, is, well, adapt as you go. I mean, recalculate. You have to recalculate. You have to redo that segmentation recalculation at least every year. And you also have to define a process for new customer, because if a new customer arrives, well, in which category are you going to put that specific customer? In which box is he going to end up? Allow sales to upgrade or downgrade. So that will, again, as we mentioned before, that will help salespeople to also have a voice and to have their buy-in for that process. And remember that segmentation is a process, is not a project. So it's a process. Why? Because it has to be used in your entire S&OP cycle. So it's not only segmentation for segmentation, but you use that segmentation in your demand planning, in your supply planning, in your inventory management. So I hope you enjoyed it. So it's already the end. I'm just on time, so it means that we still have 5 minutes for some questions. So it's not that easy to cover such topics, which is segmentation, in 1 hour. I hope we gave you, or at least I gave you, an overview of what segmentation is and why is it used for. So it's not only to create ABC classification, but it's really, what's very important is, based on that classification, I will be able to allow or to assign different services to each groups. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that, well, if I have my segmentation, I will be able to use my segmentation in all my S&OP processes. So thank you for your attention. I hope it was interesting. I hope you learned something. Now it's gonna be 5-minute Q&A. I see that we are running just on time, so we have 5-minute Q&A. It's quite easy. So if you have a question, you just type. So normally you should see a box on your screen where it's written question. So if you type a question there, I should get it. So feel free to ask questions. Okay, so I got a first question, which is more a remark. Thank you. It has been very interesting and clear. So I'm very happy. Thank you, Karina, for that message. Another question that we get here is, well, what's the time required if you want to implement such a project? Well, here I would say it really depends. I know it's not the correct answer, but it really depends, because as I mentioned before, you have to involve all departments from your company. So if they are fast in responding, then potentially we can do that kind of exercise within three months. Okay, but if it's more difficult to have everyone, so you need the sales department, financial department, and all people involved. If you need to group them in a room and organize 3 to 4 different brainstorm sessions, well, there it can take sometimes. Congrats, good presentation. Thank you, Alejandro. Will we receive the presentation by email? Yes, Catherine is going to send it to you right after. And even if you are interested in some of the cases, so here 1 hour again, I really have to go high level, but if you are interested in getting more information about a specific case, let me know. Yes, it will be available also on YouTube. I think Catherine is confirming. So I got a question here: will it be available in a podcast? Yes, it's gonna be available on our YouTube channel. Last question I got here is: can that exercise be used also to define MTO or MTS strategy? Well, good question. So here to me, that's the entire goal of segmentation. So segmentation, MTO, MTS, you have to see it also as a service. So the question is, well, do you want to offer that service to all of your customers? Because MTO, MTS is not only a question of, hey, that item, I will put it as MTO item. Well, that's not what I believe. What I believe is that item can be either MTO or MTS, meaning, for instance, it can be MTS for a customer, but it can be an MTO item for another customer. So I see that we are running over time. We have 1 hour 30 seconds. So I'm happy that I managed to do it on time. Let us know if you have some questions, if you have feedback, if you have some ideas to improve our webinar, some stuff that you like, some stuff that you didn't like. We are very open to it, so feel free to share. I thank you very much for your time, for your attention, and looking forward to hearing from you.